You gotta be tough to live in the city, especially if you're a plant. Today, we're going to explore and discover 10 species of plants native to Northeast Ohio that are tough enough to live in the city. Urban environments are a difficult place for most species of plants and trees to grow, and not many of them can grow in such a landscape. But today we're going to look at some native wildflowers that are ecological survivors and can tolerate the tough and hard environment of the city landscape. Before we hit the city streets though, go ahead and hit like and subscribe so that you never miss your dose of nature in the city. Let's go check them out. In a beautiful forest ecosystem, lots of different kinds of plants and flowers can grow there, in part because there's a rich upper layer of soil known as humus. Now, I'm not talking about the hummus that you dip your pita bread in, but rather a loose, fluffy layer of soil that's rich in nutrients and moisture and minerals for plants to grow, and which most trees and plants need. In an urban environment though, however, all of that humus layer has been stripped away, often down to bedrock. And plants that were once common and abundant have become rare, growing only in well-protected and large natural areas like our metro parks. In place, plants that were once much less common on the landscape have become abundant, and these are wildflowers and trees that can tolerate urban environments like railroad right-of-ways, sidewalk cracks, and other places where it's difficult for most other plants to grow. Some of these plants are native and are extremely beneficial to pollinators and have many other environmental benefits. So as we look to revitalize our city, we can perhaps design and redesign our cities in ways where we can include areas for wildflowers and plants that can make it in the city. Why don't we go ahead and take a closer look at some of these tough city plants, and we can admire their natural beauty in a landscape greatly altered by people. Let's go take a look. Canada goldenrod is one of the most common late summer wildflowers. Technically, there are two species, but it is difficult to distinguish between the two, as they look very similar and they often grow together in the same area. In September, goldenrods adorn open fields and roadsides with a sea of yellow, and many pollinators and beneficial insects use goldenrod as a host plant, which in turn, those plants provide food sources for scores of birds at the beginning of fall migration. In fact, you could consider goldenrods to be a mini ecosystem of their own. Often blooming at the same time as goldenrods, New England asters add sparkles of purple to an often yellow September cityscape. Butterflies are attracted to their bright yellow coronas, which are lined with pollen grains. Their showy blossoms can sometimes persist past a frost, attributing to their hardiness. You know summer is ending when you see their purple blossoms along old fields and meadows. Daisy Fleabane is another aster with large clusters of small white flowers with yellow centers. This tough city plant can grow nearly anywhere, including out of sidewalk cracks, and the flowers are sometimes nicknamed frost asters, as many of them will continue blooming after a frost, and sometimes will become freeze-dried after a late autumn cool down. Bees, flower flies, and scores of other pollinators are attracted to their flowers, which are best appreciated when viewed closely. Pokeweed produces clusters of dark, poisonous berries, and the juice from pokeweed berries has been used as ink. In fact, the U.S. Constitution was signed using ink made from pokeweed berries. This strange-looking plant pops up in old fields and roadsides with thick and fleshy purple stalks, large leaves, and small white flowers that eventually develop into the berry clusters. Pokeweed has a wide growing range, and in the deep south, a delicacy known as poke salad was made from cooking down the stalks, which, if those are not well cooked, are toxic to eat. The flowers bloom in midsummer, and fruits develop in August and early September. White snakeroot likely became more abundant in Ohio, where it thrives in fallowed and overgrazed farmland. The plant is toxic to most animals, including cows, and it is common and widespread along rivers, meadows, and empty lots. It prefers a little bit of shade, and the foamy white flower clusters can sometimes persist into November. Their white flowers blend well with the yellows and purples of late summer. Sometimes confused with snakeroot, late boneset is a less showy and arguably more abundant late summer wildflower. It can quickly invade a garden or empty lot and tolerates dry and very disturbed soils. While some gardeners may not appreciate its pervasiveness and less showy flowers, late boneset compensates well for its value to monarch butterflies, who during their migration seem addicted to the nectar from its flowers. It's possible to see over a dozen monarch butterflies on a flower stalk during September when the butterflies are fueling themselves up for the long migration to Mexico. Wingstem is a tall and showy yellow wildflower that grows in river floodplains, shaded ditches, and any overgrown damp spot. The name comes from the flaps along the stem, and wingstem stalks can reach over 12 feet in height. They dazzle the landscape with yellow in mid and late summer before goldenrod takes its place as the golden crown king of city plants. The orchid-like flowers of spotted jewelweed resemble orange jewels. Bumblebees are attracted to their flowers, which blossom from dense mats that are common in damp and shady places, especially in the many overgrown ravines around Cleveland. The flowers develop into pods with spring-loaded seeds that pop out when touched by an animal or a human hand. There is also a species of jewelweed that sometimes can be seen that's yellow, adding to the variety of color that urban wildflowers offer. Jewelweed blooms during the second half of summer. Green-headed coneflower is a showy summer wildflower that's common along riverbanks and overgrown ditches. The divided leaves and larger flower heads distinguish it from wingstem. Instead of a yellow or white center, a pale green corona also distinguishes this wildflower from coneflowers, asters, and other similar-looking species. Finally, we have Staghorn Sumac. Not to worry, this small tree is not to be confused with poison sumac, and in fact, the candlestick-like red fruits can be brewed to make a citrus-tasting tea or lemonade. The highly divided, palm-like leaves display showy fall color, and this small tree is often the only native tree that can tolerate compacted soils and industrial sites. The fruits often persist well into winter, offering birds and wildlife a supplemental food source during Cleveland's harsh winters. As our world continues to urbanize, what we might have dismissed as noxious weeds growing in an empty lot may be some of the wildflowers that we can use to revitalize urban natural areas. Many of these wildflowers benefit pollinators. They help filter stormwater and clean the air and add a natural source of beauty to an otherwise harsh landscape. If you're thinking about including native plants in your yard, you'll want to check out my video a tutorial on the tree selector for homeowners, where you can find a listing of nurseries around the Cleveland area that sell native plants. And in the future, I hope to do a video where I feature local nurseries that sell native plants. So be on the lookout for a future video like that one sometime down the road. Do you have any of the plants we talked about today growing in your yard? Have you noticed some wildflowers growing in abundance in your neighborhood and you want to know what they are? Maybe I can even help you with identifying them. Let me know and show me photos in the comments below. From the city streets of Cleveland, Ohio, my name is Alex and I'm your CLE Urban Naturalist.